Okay, here are three things that your relationship needs to survive or it's not sustainable. Not only will your relationship not have wings, it will also not have legs. Okay, let's go. Number one, your relationship has to survive distance. So, not just physical distance, because if we're going to live our lives, we're going to be away from our partner, right? So, whether it's from work or for whatever, travel, hanging out with other friends, you can't hold onto your partner's leg like an infant holding on to her mom's leg. So the physical distance, because I know a lot of people who in relationships have so much anxiety when their partner leaves, whether it's for a work trip or whatever, and lots of jealousy, lots of suspicion, right? So your relationship has to survive that. Also, emotional distance, and I'm not saying that people, are stonewalling. I'm talking about emotional distance in that there has to be some room for your partner to go through his or her own journey. Yes, we're doing life with our partner, but we're not the head growing out of our partner's shoulder, right? We are two people going through life, deciding to share life with each other. So there has to be room for your partner to emotionally go through his or her own shit. Now, hopefully, you're sharing whatever you're going through with your partner, and that's how you emotionally hold hands. But there has to be some distance there. I remember in my 20s when love was sticky, and I thought that if you love me, you go down with me, right? I thought that love meant give me your life, not your hand. Today, I believe that love means I'll give you my hand, not my life. And at that time, I expected my partner to tell me everything, to be completely transparent with every single thing, every inner thought, every thing that they were going through, almost as like I had a right to know. And I don't think that's healthy. There are some things that we don't have to tell our partner. We don't have to. Yes, we should be vulnerable and transparent, but we don't have to verbally vomit every thought that we have to our partner. We can keep some things to ourselves, right? So that emotional distance and, of course, physical distance, that's something that your relationship has to survive or it's not sustainable. It will not have legs. Okay, the second one is the relationship has to survive, and I know it sounds obvious, fights, because it's not about how many times we fight, it's about how we fight, and I talk about this a lot. If every fight that you have with your relationship, and by the way, fights are not bad. Fights can be great because fights can get us to discover, check in. If done in a healthy way, fights can actually produce relationship glue. It can connect us, it can get us to learn more about each other as long as the fights are healthy. Now, if fights are chaotic and just reactions, people throwing chairs, then of course that's not healthy. And if you are fighting unfair, if you are assassinating character, if you are not taking ownership, if you're pointing a lot of fingers, that's definitely going to flip the magnet. Those fights can then become cracks in your relationship container, and your relationship eventually the house of cards are going to come crashing down. So if your relationship can't survive fights, it's not sustainable. And the only way that your relationship is going to be able to survive fights is if the fighting is done in a healthy way. So you have to come into conflict with empathy, with compassion, with kindness. You have to come into conflict through the door of a conversation, not reactions, right? You have to leave conflicts without resentment, anger. Now, everything doesn't have to be resolved. I don't know if it's realistic that every fight has to be resolved and you have to go to bed without being angry. Those are great ideas and concepts, but realistically, yeah, there are going to be things that you disagree with, you disagree on with your partner. forever, you know. But love is a daily choice, and you still choose to love that person. There's going to be things that are not resolved, you know, and life goes on, and you learn to forgive. Or not, I don't know. But the fights can't be where people are left unheard, hurt, you know, shaken, crippled. Anything that creates a drift, anything that creates people being angry at each other over time is going to bring down the house. So your relationship has to survive fights. And the third one is, can I just put real quick a side note? One of the most important things about fights is that at the end of the fight, at the end of the conversation, people are taking ownership. That's another way that fights can become healthy. Two people owning their piece in whatever, you know, the conflict is, putting action behind that. So now two people are taking ownership, which then creates change. People are looking inward. It sparks evolution, and the relationship grows and evolves, right? And also the people in the relationship grow and evolve as they take ownership. Having revelations, taking ownership. Having revelations, taking ownership, right? That pattern creates evolution and growth. The third thing that your relationship has to survive is individual growth. Speaking of growth. So, you know, you hear that in relationships, how a lot of people outgrow their partners. It's because the relationship is not able to survive that, right? Your relationship has to survive two people on their own personal journeys growing. The relationship has to have that elasticity of holding the space where people are drifting and coming back and growing and going through phases and all of that, you know, because that's the human experience. That's what life's about. And so if your relationship is so tight, if you're holding on to your partner so tightly that you are stunting her change, her growth, the relationship is not going to survive that, because what you're basically doing is you're saying pick your growth, or pick this relationship or your growth. This happens a lot in our 20s, you know, when we don't have the security, the capacity, and we are grabbing our partner instead of holding in a healthy way, instead of creating that safe space. So your relationship has to survive the individual journey of both people in the relationship and what they are going through, their evolution. And if the relationship does survive that and is able to hold that kind of space, then it really builds trust, right? Then it really builds a strong foundation. Then it really builds legs of that relationship. So ask yourself, if you're in a relationship or if you are looking to invest in someone, as you get to know that person and build something, ask yourself if the relationship survives these three things. Thank you for listening. Be well.